Hello friends, welcome to a new topic today. In this chapter, this is about physiology. Okay, in this physiology, we are going to learn the first chapter in physiology, which is about the cell. Okay, so in the cell, we have, if you see a cell, if this is the cell, it consists of the plasma membrane and the nucleus. Okay, and this is the cytoplasm. Okay, so first we will learn about the cell membrane. So this cell membrane is also called as plasma membrane, and so this is the plasma membrane, model of plasma membrane. So if you see this cell or plasma membrane, this cell membrane, the first important thing is the thickness of cell membrane. The thickness of cell membrane is 7.5 to 10 nanometers thick. Okay, so in this cell membrane, the major component here is protein and lipids. So carbohydrates are very minimal and there are mainly proteins and lipids. These proteins are present around 55% and these lipids are present in 42%. Among these lipids, we can divide these lipids into three parts. One, we have phosphoglycerides. Okay, these phosphoglycerides are actually, these are maximum. What are these phosphoglycerides? These phosphoglycerides include phosphatidylcholine. We have something called as phosphatidylcholine. This phosphatidylcholine is nothing but lecithin, and this also contains phosphatidylserine. This also contains phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylinositol. We have, okay, all these are phospholipids. Then we also have these are phosphoglycerides. Okay, these phosphoglycerides are a part of phospholipids. See, among the lipids, most of them contain phospholipids. Among the phospholipids, one of the phospholipids is phosphoglyceride. The second phospholipid is sphingomyelin. Okay, one of the phospholipid is phosphoglycerides. The second phospholipid is sphingomyelin. There is also cholesterol present in the plasma membrane, and we also have other lipids, especially we have glycolipids. That is the carbohydrates. Along with that, we have lipids. That is called as glycolipids. Okay, so these are the different types of lipids present in the cell membrane. And one important thing is there is no triglycerides. These triglycerides are not present. These are the different types of lipids which are present. So if you see this sphingolipid, sphingomyelin, which we see, this is most common in myelin sheath. Because it is most common in myelin sheath, where do you see this? This we will see it in CNS most commonly. Then phospholipid of the cell membrane, if you see, it has, so this is the model of the phospholipid. What does this have? This have each phospholipid. So what is a phospholipid here? See, let me name these. This is the carbohydrate side chain, but what is important is this is phospholipid bilayer. Okay, and these are the proteins which you see. We have peripheral proteins, integral proteins, protein channels. We will learn about all of them, but this is the phospholipid bilayer. So this is a phospholipid bilayer. So if you see only one phospholipid, so this is the only one phospholipid, and each phospholipid has a hydrophilic end and hydrophobic tail. Okay, hydrophilic is nothing but polar, whereas hydrophobic is non-polar. So we have hydrophilic end and we have hydrophobic end. Okay, so if you see, this hydrophobic end is facing outside, whereas hydrophilic end is facing inside. Okay, so let us see the protein. So we have learned about the lipids. Now let us see the proteins in the plasma membrane. So this is the same picture again. So in this picture we have different types of proteins. We have two major types of proteins. All the proteins in the plasma membrane, they can be divided into two major types. One, we have integral proteins. These integral proteins are also called as transmembrane proteins. These are integral proteins or transmembrane proteins, or we can also call them as intrinsic proteins. Whereas the second type of proteins which we find them are peripheral proteins. We have peripheral proteins or we have extrinsic proteins. Okay, we have integral proteins or transmembrane proteins, or we are intrinsic proteins. whereas peripheral proteins are extrinsic proteins. Okay, so integral proteins are those which are these. These are, these are phospholipids. I'm sorry. This is the integral protein. This is present through and through. See, if this is the cell membrane, if this is present on the whole, occupying the whole of the cell membrane, that is called as integral lipids. Sorry, integral proteins. But what is peripheral proteins? Peripheral proteins are only present on one side. Okay, that is peripheral proteins. So if you see, these integral proteins are present through and through, and they are globular, right? And they are amphipathic. They also contains two ends, and the two ends that they contain are hydrophilic ends. These contain hydrophilic end. These integral proteins, by non-polar or hydrophobic end, they interact with the lipids also. Okay, so what is their use? Their use is to, these integral proteins use is mainly, it can be, it is for attaching some other things, or there are many uses based on the types of intrinsic proteins, but that's not necessary right now. Now we have one more type of proteins which are called as peripheral proteins. These peripheral proteins, as you can see, they are located on the surface of the membrane. Okay, and these are bound to the hydrophilic portion of the lipoproteins, sorry, lipids. See, that may, one of the difference between these is, if you see the integral proteins, if this is the integral protein, it is bound to the hydrophobic end of the lipids, right? Whereas in the peripheral proteins, it is bound to the hydrophilic end. This is the hydrophilic end, right? It is bound to the hydrophilic end of the lipids. That is one important thing. Then, these do not require use of detergents for their release. Then they are released by treatment with salt solution of ionic strength. So if you put this cell in a salt solution with high ionic strength, then these proteins, which are peripheral proteins, are released. Okay, these peripheral proteins or extrinsic proteins, these serve as cell adhesion molecules, CAMs, which is nothing but cell adhesion molecules that will anchor the cells to the neighboring cells. Okay, so what are the examples of these peripheral proteins? These are very important, especially there is some peripheral proteins which are also involved in causing anemia, that is pectrins. Sorry, this is pectrin. There are peripheral proteins like spectrin, ankyrin, and we have band 4.1. Okay, spectrin, ankyrin, and band 4.1. These are the peripheral or extrinsic proteins, and if you see, these are the ones which are important in pathogenesis of hereditary spherocytosis. Their deficiency is mainly results in a disease called as hereditary spherocytosis, which you will learn in pathology. Uh, then membrane symmetry. If you see, both lipids and proteins are distributed in the plasma membrane, right? And they are distributed asymmetrically. So we have something called as, so here we have membrane of this cell membrane is asymmetry. It is not symmetrical. So what is membrane asymmetry? So asymmetry of the membrane can be divided into two types. One, we have inside out asymmetry, and other we have regional asymmetry. We have inside out asymmetry and we have regional asymmetry also. What does this mean? If it's inside out asymmetry, that is, it refers to structural differentiation through the membrane. See, for proteins are obviously they are asymmetrically distributed. Even phospholipids are also asymmetrically distributed. How are they? See, you can tell that the lipids are bilayered, so why aren't they symmetry? Why are not they in symmetry? See, they are definitely in bilayer, but still they are not symmetrically distributed. That is because if you see the phospholipids which contain choline, like lecithin, or if you see sphingomyelin, okay, lecithin and sphingomyelin are nothing but they are phospholipids. They are mostly located in the outer layer, whereas some of the amino phospholipids like phosphatidylserine. If you see some of the other lipids like phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylethanolamine, if you see, these are the other types of phospholipids which are most commonly seen in the inner layer. Okay, if you see the cholesterol, which is one of the most important phospholipid, it is present more commonly in the outer surface than in the inner surface. So this you should remember. And there is one more important thing, that is regional symmetry. This is inside out asymmetry. Then we have regional asymmetry also. That is the these lipids or these proteins, these are specific to the particular specific to the organ in which they are located. For example, if you see the renal tubules, how are the renal tubules seen? They are coiled, right? This is a renal tubule which is coiled. Whereas if you see the intestinal mucosal cells, intestinal mucosa is something like this, right? So based on the region also, the distribution of the lipids and proteins will differ. So that is comes under asymmetry. Then we also have one more thing which is called as dynamicity of plasma membrane. What does this mean? See, the lipids and proteins are integral parts of our cell membrane, true, and they are dynamic. What is dynamic? Dynamic is movement. They can move from one place to one point to another point, okay, within the plasma membrane. Okay, the process by which these lipids, mainly the lipids and the integral proteins, okay, the integral proteins and lipids, they can move from one point to other point in the cell membrane itself, and that is called as lateral diffusion. Okay, if they move from one point to another point within the plane of the membrane, okay, in the membrane, then we call it as lateral diffusion. There is also one more type of diffusion which is called as flip-flop diffusion. See, lateral diffusion is if they are, see, for example, if the same yeah, this one, the same thing I'm putting it here. So this is the membrane, right? So if this is the membrane and this is, think that this is point A protein, okay, and this is point B protein. Okay, if A shifts to B, okay, shifts to this B position, then we call it as lateral diffusion. Okay, there is one more diffusion where the lipids can also go through. There is one more dynamicity where the lipids can form one more mechanism which is called as flip-flop mechanism. There is something called as flip-flop mechanism. This flip-flop mechanism is very slow and does not occur in membrane proteins. It mostly occurs only in the lipids. It is not seen in proteins at all. It is seen only in lipids. Okay, what is this flip-flop? See, this is 1, this is 2. Flip-flop mechanism is 1 to 2 division. That is, they are moving transversely. That is flip-flop mechanism. Okay. Then we have one more thing which you have to learn about the cell membrane, is about the fluid mosaic model of the cell membrane. This is fluid mosaic model which we are learning here. Okay, what is this fluid mosaic model? He says that, the scientist says that the membrane has an iceberg which is floating in the sea. See, this lipids are compared to the sea, whereas these proteins are mainly compared to the icebergs. Okay, so this is fluid mosaic model where he says that the proteins are icebergs which are floating over the lipids which is a sea. So this fluidity here, where does the fluidity depends upon? The fluidity of this membrane mainly depends upon the lipid concentration, which is most important factor, which is lipid concentration, and it is dependent upon the density of integral proteins, and it is also dependent upon the temperature. So the fluidity depends upon the lipid concentration, density of integral proteins, and also on the temperature. Okay, so this is important. Then how is it dependent on temperature? Okay, this is important. So if you see at lower temperature the membrane is rigid, right, and at higher temperature the membrane becomes fluid like. So the transition where the anything moves or changes from gel to fluid like, okay, this temperature at which this transition from gel to fluid type occurs, this is called as transition temperature. Okay, so transition temperature is obviously, and this transition temperature is inversely proportional to the fluidity. If transitional temperature is more, then fluidity is low. If transitional temperature is high, fluidity is low. If transitional temperature is low, fluidity is high. So, and one more thing which is important is if there are saturated fatty acids. If there are saturated fatty acid chains, if in any case there is saturated fatty acid chains, um, and or stronger, these saturated fatty acid chains have stronger interaction. Okay, so these will cause more TM. Okay, this is important. Thus, because of this more TM, there is obviously decreased fluidity, right? And when if there is unsaturated fatty acids, if in any case if there is unsaturated fatty acids, these unsaturated fatty acids obviously they have lesser interaction, so they have decreased TM, and thus there is increased fluidity. Okay, so this is important. So which lipid mostly favors fluidity? Cholesterol is the one which mostly favors fluidity. Once we have learned about the fluidity, then we'll have to see the permeability of the ions. Okay, so what is permeability? See, there is something called as permeability, which is very important. So what do you say permeability has? Permeability is, this is the phospholipid again. This is the lipid, cell membrane, right? Permeability are, there are some proteins which will help, which will easily move from outside to inside or inside to outside. The percentage with which the proteins or the, not just the proteins, the substances, any molecule can move through the phospholipids is called as permeability, and it depends upon something called as, there is something called as permeability coefficient, which will determine the permeability of the substances across the uh, plasma membrane. Okay, so the permeability coefficient, the order of this permeability coefficient in different molecules is very important. This permeability coefficient is least for sodium, followed by potassium, followed by, it is also less for chloride, followed by glucose, followed by tryptophan. Okay, then followed by urea, it is also less for urea, is equal to urea and glycerol, it is almost equal, and it is lesser in indole, and it is lesser in water. Okay, so these are the different substance places where permeability coefficient is from least to highest. Then one more important thing is, if you see different membranes, we have learned about the cell membrane, so we will see other types of membranes also which are present. Yeah, so this is the, if you see, this is the cell, right? In this cell we have different types of we have different types of organelles. Okay, so in these organelles, these we have intracellular organelles. In these intracellular organelles, all these will have the membranes. So these different membranes also have different constitution or composition. Okay, so all these are called as organelles: mitochondria, intermediate filaments, ribosomes, rough endoplasmic reticulum, nucleus, nucleolus, chromatin, Golgi apparatus, Golgi vesicles, peroxisome, secretory vesicle, vacuoles, all these are organelles. So there are two important, you know, organelles which are very important, especially the mitochondrial membrane is very important. Why? The mitochondrial inner membrane has maximum protein content. This mitochondria has two membranes, right? Inner membrane and outer membrane. The inner membrane of mitochondria has the highest amount of proteins. So because it has highest amount of proteins, it has maximum protein lipid ratio. Obviously it has many proteins, so as a result it has maximum protein lipid ratio. Then in the neurons, okay, we have something called as myelin. Okay, this myelin has highest lipids. Lipids are highest in myelin. It is made up of sphingolipids which are highest in myelin. So this myelin has the least proteins to lipid ratio. Okay, so let us see the how is protein to lipid ratio in different organelles. Protein to lipid ratio, if you see, it is highest in inner mitochondrial membrane, as we have already said, it is highest in inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, followed by it is next, this is 3:2. Okay, then the second is sarcoplasmic reticulum. This, sorry, sarcoplasmic reticulum. Then it is followed by outer mitochondrial membrane. Okay, followed by it is least in myelin sheath. Obviously it is least in myelin sheath, which is around 0.23, which is minimum. This is 0, this is 2, this is 0. Sorry, 1.1. Okay, so these are the different things which is important. Next, so this is important, this table. I'll even add some things to this table. So what are the markers of different organelles? So if you see mitochondria, cytochrome C oxidase and succinate dehydrogenase are present in mitochondria. But here, apart from this, there is also in inner mitochondrial membrane. The main marker of inner mitochondrial membrane is ATP synthase is main marker of inner mitochondrial membrane, which is important. Then in lysosome, we have beta hexosaminidase, beta galactosidase, acid phosphatase is important here. Endosome is not much important. Peroxisome catalase is the marker which is very important. In Golgi apparatus, we have alpha mannose 2 and galactosyl transferase. This is important. And there is even one more extra which is also important. That is, we have sialyl transferase also here. Sialyl transferase is also a marker of Golgi apparatus. In endoplasmic reticulum, the marker is glucose 6 phosphatase, which is very important. You should definitely remember this. And in cytosol, the marker is lactate dehydrogenase. Okay, we have one more marker which is also important, is marker of plasma membrane. So if you see in the plasma membrane, the marker is 5-nucleotidase. 5-nucleotidase, or there can be adenyl cyclase or sodium potassium ATPase. These are the markers in plasma membrane. So these markers are very important. Now, once we have learned about all the markers and everything, so let us now go into details about the, okay, we will even see that even more markers which are present. Lysozyme, in this lysozyme, see, acid phosphatase is the best in lysozyme. In Golgi apparatus, I have already told you it is alpha mannose 2, sialyl transferase and galactosyl transferase. There is one more also here which is in the Golgi apparatus, which is GLC and AC transferase, which should be remembered. Cytosol, as we have already said, it is LDH. Then endosome is not much necessary. Nucleus, obviously DNA is most important because in our humans DNA is seen. Okay, and in ribosomes we don't have it here, right? In ribosomes, the marker of ribosomes is RNA. Okay, there is one more which is not given clearly, that is mitochondria. See, mitochondria, if you see, the markers of mitochondria will differ according to the site of it. So for example, if it is in the inner membrane, the marker of inner membrane of mitochondria is mainly ATP synthase, and we have succinate dehydrogenase. Whereas the marker of intermembrane space, okay, the marker of intermembrane space include mainly creatinine kinase and adenyl kinase are the markers of intermembrane space. Then what about the markers of matrix? For the matrix, the markers will be glutamate dehydrogenase, and also pyruvate dehydrogenase, and enzymes of TCA cycle, and also enzymes of beta oxidation of fatty acids. All these can be the markers of mitochondria. So this is very important. Okay, these mitochondrial markers are very very important, which you should not forget this. Okay, next, once we have learned about this, let us now learn the different. Oh, sorry, this is done, right? Now let us learn few points about the cell, the proper cell. Okay, so in this cell, if you see, we have um, yeah, we have cytoplasm and organelles. So in the organelles, first we have mitochondria, right? So these mitochondria are called the powerhouses of the cell, because these are the enzymes where energy metabolism occurs, and ATP synthesis also occurs in this membrane. So if you see these mitochondria, these have two different membranes. It is bilipid layer is present. It has an outer membrane, and it also has an inner membrane, and this is the in between space, which is intermembranous space is present. Okay, many processes occur in mitochondria. Anyways, we will deal all of them in biochemistry. Okay, these mitochondria can also import the protein, as well as itself it can synthesize the protein also. So one important thing is, how are you going to separate this mitochondria from other cell organelles? We do centrifugation is a technique which will separate, the centrifugation will separate mitochondria from other cell organelles. From other cell organelles, you can separate this mitochondria by this centrifugation technique. Okay, so the enzymes, as we have already dealt with all the enzymes which are present, right, in the last slide itself. Now after mitochondria, we have endoplasmic reticulum. See, these are what are endoplasmic reticulum here. See, we have two different types of endoplasmic reticulum, that is, we have rough endoplasmic reticulum, and we also have one smooth endoplasmic reticulum, right? So if you see properly, these rough endoplasmic reticulum, they have small dots here, right? These are ribosomes. These rough endoplasmic reticulum have ribosome, and they are helpful in protein synthesis, whereas smooth endoplasmic reticulum are these which do not have ribosomes, and these are helpful in lipid synthesis. Okay, these rough endoplasmic reticulum are important in protein synthesis, whereas smooth endoplasmic reticulum is important in lipid synthesis. Okay, then see, we'll see the functions of rough endoplasmic reticulum and smooth endoplasmic reticulum here. Okay, endoplasmic reticulum can be of two types. One, we can call it as, we have rough endoplasmic reticulum. Second, we have smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So this smooth and rough endoplasmic reticulum, obviously I have said they have ribosomes, and they are used in protein synthesis. Okay, and they will also cause first initial folding. The first folding or initial folding of polypeptide chain occurs in this rough endoplasmic reticulum, and for this initial binding, it forms a disulfide bond. Okay, so disulfide bond occurs in rough endoplasmic reticulum, and if you see in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, this is agranular, it does not have ribosomes, so it is helpful in steroid or lipid synthesis. It is helpful in steroid or lipid synthesis, and it also provides enzymes that control glycogen breakdown. Okay, so this is about endoplasmic reticulum. Now after that, the next thing is about the Golgi apparatus. So if you see the same picture again, what is Golgi apparatus here? So here, if you see, this is the Golgi apparatus. This is the Golgi apparatus, not these round. This one is the Golgi apparatus. Okay, what does this Golgi apparatus do? See, this is very important in Golgi apparatus. This Golgi apparatus has 6 or more membered enclosed sacs called as cisterns. It has two ends. One is cis end and the other is trans end. Okay, so these Golgi apparatus are mainly helpful in protein and polypeptide. So let me tell you. So one thing, Okay, I'll put this again here, uh, bigger one, right? So this is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So this is the protein which we are talking about. This protein will is synthesized. These rough endoplasmic reticulum will synthesize the proteins. Okay, these proteins are released by the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and these proteins are reached into the Golgi apparatus. And these Golgi apparatus, these proteins reach these Golgi apparatus, okay, and they undergo changes or modifications in the Golgi apparatus, and they are released outside in this Golgi vesicles. Okay, so there occurs the processing of lipids in this Golgi apparatus. What actually occurs is processing of proteins occurs. But what does these processing of proteins mean? What are the actual changes which occur? That means there occur glycosylation. What is this glycosylation? Glyco is carbohydrate, so adding carbohydrate moiety is called as glycosylation. So if you add a carbohydrate moiety to the proteins, it forms glycoproteins. Then we also have, it also causes sulfation, okay, especially it causes sulfation of proteins like mucopolysaccharidosis, okay. In the mucopolysaccharidosis, it can cause sulfation of mucopolysaccharides, so it can cause formation of hyaluronic acid and chondroitin sulfate also. This leads to the formation of hyaluronic acid and chondroitin sulfate also. And this Golgi apparatus can, this Golgi apparatus can do one more thing. It can also break the product. Cleavage of the product is also done by Golgi apparatus. Okay, so if you see, this Golgi apparatus has two sides. One, it has the convex side, the other we have concave side. I'll show you in the picture again, because this is very important, asked in recent exam. So if you see, this is the Golgi apparatus. It has two sides. One is the convex side. So this is the convex side, right? See, this is the convex side, and this is the cis side of Golgi apparatus, and this is the concave side. This is the trans side of Golgi apparatus. So this cis side will receive the food, so it is receiving end. It receives the proteins, whereas this trans side is the side which will secrete the proteins into the vesicles. You know, modified proteins are secreted into the proteins through this trans side. So this is secretory end. So this is very important. Okay, which is cis side and which is trans side is also important. Next, once you have done about this, now the next organelle which is important here is about the ribosomes. Where is this ribosomes? Yeah, these smaller dots are ribosomes, which you also see it on rough endoplasmic reticulum. So if you see, these ribosomes are present in two places. So these ribosomes are present either in free form in the cytoplasm, or they are present in bound form, which are bounded to rough endoplasmic reticulum. So these free forms are present in cytosol, and the bound forms are present in rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so these free proteins and rough ribosomes, there should be very important thing which you have to remember are the proteins which are synthesized by free polyribosomes and rough that is rough polyribosomes. So in free polyribosomes or cytosolic polyribosomes, these produces proteins which are nothing but I'll write it in the I'll write it in the next page. 1 minute. Yeah. So if you see here, the ribosomes are of two types. One we have free, and the other we have bound ribosomes. Okay, so these free ribosomes will secrete proteins like, which include cytosolic proteins. Then we have cytoskeleton proteins. Okay, cytosolic proteins like hemoglobin. We have cytoskeletal proteins which are produced by free ribosomes. We have mitochondrial proteins which are produced by free ribosomes. Then nuclear proteins are produced by free ribosomes, and even peroxisomal proteins are produced by free ribosomes. Okay, then bound ribosomes will produce all the other membrane proteins. All membrane proteins are produced by bound ribosomes, which include mitochondrial proteins which are synthesized by bound, then endoplasmic reticulum membrane proteins, then we have Golgi apparatus membrane proteins, and also plasma membrane proteins. All these are produced by bound ribosomes. Okay, even the secretory proteins and also lysosomal enzyme proteins. Secretory proteins, lysosomal enzyme proteins are also produced by these ribosomes. Okay, so we have learned about the different proteins which are synthesized by ribosomes. Now, once we have learned about the ribosomes, now the next thing which is important here is about the next protein, the next organelle. We have one more organelle which is called as peroxisomes. These peroxisomes, as I have already said, the enzyme marker which is important here is catalase in peroxisome, and there is one more enzyme marker which is seen in peroxisome only is uric acid. Uric acid oxidase is also one more enzyme marker which is present only in peroxisomes. See, in this peroxisomes, with the help of catalase, there occurs H2O2, that is hydrogen peroxide. Degradation or breakdown occurs with the help of this catalase enzyme, which is very important. Okay, and whenever there is some defect in these peroxisomal proteins, this defect in the peroxisomal proteins result in a syndrome which is called as Zellweger syndrome. Okay, so this is important. Next, once you have learned about the peroxisomes, the next organelle which is important here is about the lysosomes. Where are they? Yeah, these are the lysosomes which you see. So these are the lysosomes, are the enzymes which contain lots of hydrolytic enzymes. They have many hydrolytic enzymes and they digest large quantities of proteins, polysaccharides, fats and nucleic acids. Okay, these lysozymes are actually synthesized by endoplasmic reticulum itself, and they are also processed by Golgi apparatus. They are synthesized by endoplasmic reticulum and they are processed by Golgi apparatus. As I have already said, the marker of this lysozyme is acid phosphatase is the marker of this lysozyme. So we have already learned about all the markers. Now the last topic of this chapter is the last topic of this chapter, where at least one question has been asked in many exams, that is about cytochromes, cytoskeleton. So these are the different cytoskeleton which you see. This cytoskeleton is the actual framework of the cell, why the cell stands in its shape, why is it not moving, why is it not getting depressed, it is in the particular shape and perfect shape. That is with the help of these cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton, as I have already shown in the picture, it has these three types of these three are include the cytoskeleton. Okay, that is, we have three types of fibers which are intermediate fibers, microfilaments and microtubules. So first we will learn about each of them in detail. Okay, so first we will learn about the first microtubules. Okay, so we will learn about microtubules first. Microtubules. So what is this microtubules? As you see, they are made up of the protein tubulin. You can see that they are made up of protein tubulin. Tubulin has two forms, that is, we have alpha tubulin and we have beta tubulin. Okay, there is one more tubulin which is called as gamma tubulin, and if you see, this gamma tubulin plays a very important role. It has a very important role in assembly. Okay, and this gamma tubulin, it is actually localized to centrosomes. It is localized to centrosomes. It has very important role in assembly and it is localized to centrosomes. Okay, then alpha and beta subunits form heterodimer. So in this tubulin we have alpha and beta subunits which we have, they form heterodimers. Okay, these dimers will polymerize and they become increased and increased in number. That is, many heterodimers will combine together and they polymerize and they form the present microtubules. So if you see, these microtubules have two things. They are actually polar. How can you say they are polar? Because they are polymerization, or there is assembly at one end. So here in the microtubules, they have assembly at one end and they have disassembly at the other end. See, this is the picture which shows you. See, this is the place where there is assembly of microtubules. Okay, this is the place where there is disassembly of the microtubules. Okay, that is here there is polymerization proper found. Sorry, I have said reverse. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the place where there is assembly. See, the microtubules are being formed here. Okay, there is assembly at this end, assembly of microtubules. That is, there is polymerization of this end, and this end is called as plus strand or plus end. Whereas here in the other end, there is disassembly. Actually, we are not able to see it, but here there is disassembly or depolymerization occurs at this end, and this end is called as minus end. Okay, we have plus end and minus end, which will denote the polymerization and depolymerization of the microtubules. So they are always, so as a result, because of this polymerization and depolymerization, you can say that these microtubules are in the state of always dynamic instability. They are always in the state of dynamic instability. Okay, so as a result, they are called as dynamic portion of the cell. Remember, these microtubules are always called as dynamic portion of the cell. Okay, for this assembly, okay, for this assembly, this is always activated by a component called as GTP. GTP always activates this assembly. Okay, so now we have learned about this. There is one more thing which is important in microtubules are these microtubules will help us to, what are the uses of it? Uses are they will determine the cell shape and provide the structural support to the cell, and they are helpful in cell movements. So microtubules are the components of cilia. They are the components of flagella also. Okay, so as a result, they are helpful in cell movements, and they are also necessary for formation of mitotic spindle. Even mitotic spindle, the major component is these microtubules. Okay, these microtubules are also present in cilia, flagella. What about microvilli? No, sorry, not microvilli. I'm sorry. It is present in cilia, flagella, and also it is also present in axons and dendrites. Okay, in axons and dendrites, it helps in axoplasmic flow also. Okay, so these are the important things about the microtubules. Then after microtubules, the next important thing here which you have to learn, the second organelle is microfilaments. Just a minute. The next important thing is microfilaments. So these are the microfilaments. If you see, the diameter of microfilaments is 7 to 9.5 nanometers. Whatever the diameter of microtubules, we forgot to mention it. So the diameter of this microtubules is 25 nanometers. Diameter of this is diameter. Diameter is 25 nanometers. Here diameter of this uh, microfilament diameter is 7 to 9.5 nanometers. Okay, okay, this is 7 to 9.5 nanometers in diameter. So if you see here, the most important thing here is the actin. The most important thing which you have to see here is the actin. It is made up of actin. Actin is of two types. So if you see, these microfilaments are made up of actin, which are 2F actins. You can see that it is made up of 2F actins. Okay, combined together to form this microfilaments. These microfilaments also the same thing. They also have a polymerized end. Okay, and they also have a depolymerized end similar to the microtubules. Then these are also associated with actin also. So where are they present? They are present in microfilaments. Sorry, these microfilaments are present in microvilli of epithelial cells of intestinal mucosa. They are abundant in a process called as lamellipodia. What is lamellipodia? Where the cells put out, where they crawl along the surface. That is called as lamellipodia. They are helpful in lamellipodia. And the last topic in this chapter is, this is about intermediate filaments. Okay, these intermediate filaments are around, diameter of these intermediate filaments is 10 to 12 nanometers. Okay, so these intermediate filaments, they have a central rod. They have a central rod like structure. They have a central rod and they have the terminals also. Okay, they have an amino terminal. This is N terminal, is nothing but amino terminal. Okay, and they also have C terminal, which is carbohydrate terminal. They have amino terminal and they have carbohydrate terminal tail, which is present. And these intermediate filaments are very stable. See, they are always polymerase. The main difference is in microfilaments and microtubules, there is polymerization and depolymerization, but here they are always polymerized. There is no rapid assembly or disassembly. So the main component of this microfilaments is presence of lamins. Okay, these lamins are also a type of microtubules. See, these lamins are a type of microtubules. They are a type of intermediate filaments. These lamins are a type of intermediate filaments, but they are not stable. Okay, all intermediate filaments are stable, very stable. They are always in polymerized state, except these lamins which undergo phosphorylation. These lamins undergo phosphorylation and they cause disassembly at mitosis. They cause disassembly at mitosis. Okay, so this is about the lamins. They cause disassembly at mitosis. Then, so we have seen the intermediate filaments. So let us now learn some types of intermediate filaments. So these are the different types of intermediate filaments which you see. We have type 1, which are made up of acid keratin, okay, and type 2, which are basic keratin. Acid keratin is present in epithelial cells and hair and nail. They are present in epithelial cells, hairs and nails, whereas type 2 is basic keratin. Type 3 is mainly heterodimerizing. It is vimentin. Okay, where is vimentin present? Vimentin is present in, it is present in mesenchymal cells. Okay, vimentin is present in mesenchymal cells. And we have desmin. Desmin is present in muscles. And where do you see this glial fibrillary acid proteins? It is present in glial cells. And we also have one more third type, which is called as peripherin. Okay, right here the third type, one more type is peripherin. And where is this peripherin? It is present in neurons. Okay, then we have fourth type, which is present in neurofilaments, nestin and cymanin. This is mainly present in neurons. This is important. And we have fourth type, which is fifth type, which is present in nuclear intermediate filaments. And sixth type, these are lens specific beaded intermediate filaments. Okay, so these are the different types of intermediate filaments. Okay, now let us learn about the last and final two lines only, three lines. Okay, there are something called as molecular motors. Okay, what are these molecular motors? These are the proteins which have both ATPase, proteins with ATPase and GTPase activity are called as molecular motors. So what does these do? These molecular motors will move organelles or proteins or other components within the cells, from one part to other part in the cell. Okay, and these are called as molecular motors. These molecular motors use energy to generate this force. The energy that is used by these is nothing but ATPase and GTPase energies are mainly used by these motors. So we will see what are the motors, molecular motors. The first motor here is kinesin. So if you see, this is the picture of kinesin. What does this kinesin do? This is involved in exoplasmic transport. Okay, So what does this is this involved? This involved movement of this will moves vesicles down the concentration gradient, or it will move the vesicles towards the positive charge or positive end of microfilament. Sorry, of microtubule. So if you see, let me show you in this picture. In this picture, see, this is the kinesin. Okay, let me use smaller color. Okay, this is the kinesin. Okay, what is this kinesin doing? Okay, so this part, this is the kinesin, this whole kinesin. Okay, it is moving. This kinesin is moving this vesicle is being moved by this kinesin. Okay, this is the kinesin. Sorry, this is the kinesin. This is the vesicle. Okay, this vesicle is moved along the tubule. See, it is moving along the tubule. This is the microtubule, and it is moving towards where? Towards the positive end of the microtubule. Okay, what is it helpful in? It is helpful in axon transport. So this is important about kinesin. Now, the next thing is next molecular motor is, see, look at this. The next molecular motor is this is dynactin. Okay, what does this dynactin do? This dynactin is used in retrograde flow. This is correctly opposite to kinesin. This is involved in retrograde flow, and it will move towards the negative charge. It will move the vesicles towards negative end of microtubules. Okay, this dynactin is also called as dianin. Okay, this dynactin is also called as dianin or dianin. If you see this dynactin or dianin, this will use ATPase. This will use ATPase only. Okay, then this dianin, if you see, this dianin is of two types. One, you have cytosolic dianin, which is present in cytosols, and it is helpful in retrograde transport, whereas we also have axonemal dianin. Okay, this axonemal dianin is helpful in cilia and flagellar movement. Cilia and flagellar movement helps with the help of this axonemal dianin. Okay, then the next one is molecular motor is myosin. This myosin uses again an ATPase. Okay, and this is an ATPase and uses ATP, and it is involved in obviously muscle contraction. Okay, then at the end we have one more, that is the last one. The last one, which is called as dynamin. What does this dynamin use? This uses GTP. It is a GTPase and it uses GTP. And this dynamin is involved in, what is it involved? It is involved in endocytosis. So this blue color is dynamin. See, this is used in endocytosis. Okay, so these are the different types of molecular motors present. So this is completely about the cell structure. So thank you guys for watching my lecture. In the next class, we will learn about body fluids and transport mechanism. Thank you.